This week in our readings, we're going through Numbers chapter 15. And there's so many important lessons for us from in the latter part of Leviticus and in the first half of the book of Numbers. But there is one lesson in the book of Numbers that we can't afford to miss and that has such important applications to our lives. And that is the high price of unbelief. God, when he took the children of Israel out of Egypt, led them through the Red Sea, he showed his might in delivering them, and then he brought them to different places where he wanted to show them his greatness and his sufficiency to supply all of their needs. But at each of these tests, Israel failed. For instead of learning to trust the Lord, every time they came to a difficult place where they had nothing but His promise, they would instead murmur and grumble against what God was doing and where God was leading them. And so when they came to the brink of the promised land, they were not prepared to obey God by faith. Instead, they sent the 12 spies out, one spy from each of the tribes to search out the land and bring back a report to them. And when the spies came back, they there were two reports: a majority report from 10 of the spies, a minority report from two of them, Caleb and Joshua. The majority said, "We cannot take the land. There are people of large stature who live in the land, and we can't conquer them." Caleb and Joshua said, there are giant people who live in the land, but God has given them over to us. Let's go and take it. And the people rebelled against the Lord, and they voted with the majority in unbelief, and they murmured about where they were. And yet, here is God's perspective on their unbelief. In Numbers 14, in verse 11, it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'How long will this people despise me? And how long will they not believe in me in spite of all of the signs that I have done to them?'" It's striking that God says that unbelief is despising Him. It is not counting Him worthy of our heart commitment and our faith following Him in obedience. And so the children of Israel would spend the next 40 years wandering in the wilderness. Each one of us come to those places where God's word comes to us, and we have to make choices whether we in faith are going to believe Him and follow Him fully and know that He will perform His promises, or we will lose heart in unbelief. But when we do not believe Him, we dishonor Him, we despise Him, we diminish His greatness and His glory. We must be a people of faith, a people who stake our lives on the greatness and the grandeur and the glory of our God.